So welcome to the MVP series here at Georgetown, and obviously the purpose of this lecture series is really to help all of you kind of take your ideas and turn them into something. A startup, a concept, something you're running towards, something you're working on. And the idea here is just going to be very practical, and today's lecture is going to start to really get into the specifics of how you actually take kind of all of the learning that you've done, your idea generation, your testing and talking to customers, and actually start to go out and build something. How do you put something in place? And so what you'll see today is I've gone out and kind of surveyed all of the potential tools that I know of that can help you build an MVP. And so we're going to talk through some of those today. There's literally dozens of different ways you can approach it. I've kind of grouped them into about 13 or so different sets of tools that we can use. So we're going to talk through those today, and then at the end we're going to leave time for a couple volunteers who want to come up and actually brainstorm with the group about what MVP approach they might want to take. So if anyone's interested in kind of having their idea or their concept beaten up a little bit and some approaches to it, we'll do that today. So we'll get started. So the MVP series is really designed to help people think about evidence-based entrepreneurship. So who here is here for the first lecture, the first time they've been? Okay, good. So I'm going to cover a few things that we've talked about before. So for those of you who have been repeaters, we're going to be covering a couple things just to get everyone up to speed. But really the concepts that we're teaching here are all about evidence-based entrepreneurship. And the whole goal here is to say, let's get out of trusting our guts and actually start to use data and insights and tools to help us build better startups. So we're going to be using data, and we're going to be, the goal of this for all of you is to actually be able to build some kind of an MVP. And we'll talk today, literally there's tons of tools that you could do to build something. None of them require any technology skills to do it. So we'll talk about a lot of tools and then we'll brainstorm. So the series is actually 4 series. There's actually, we're on the 3rd lecture here, so we're at the halfway point, I guess. And the first 2 lectures have really been focused on a couple themes that we'll talk about more. There's one more lecture series that'll be focused really on the specifics, nuts and bolts of actually improving your product, talking about once you've got something out there, how do you test and learn on it? So that'll be the last lecture series, which will be on the 9th. And in addition, I'll probably have some friends come in so that we'll break this up a little bit where you'll get to meet some other people besides just me. So welcome to evidence-based entrepreneurship. It is kind of the gold standard that I hope all of you strive for. It's actually getting out of trusting our gut on making all our decisions and seeing how you can actually use evidence to make decisions while you're being an entrepreneur. So this kind of slide is what I always like to talk at the start about, and this process actually works. So it's not just something that I believe or it's not something that I think. We actually tried to use data to see that it works, and Steve Blank actually has been working with the National Science Foundation, who actually was helping me do some of the development of this course. And what they found is they ran a similar type of evidence-based program for individuals who were getting grants from the National Science Foundation. And the results speak for themselves. We're at a 300% increase in teams using an evidence-based process. This kind of lean launchpad is a specific process they went through, but similar to what we're doing. Using that process, they saw a 300% increase in getting funding. So I'm not just a fan of this, I also believe that it works. And so I think part of the trick here is actually following the process. So my name is Eric Custer. I'm an entrepreneur. I have done many startups, and I'm currently doing a startup. So you'll also hear some stories tonight about some things that I'm doing and I'm using. So these are not just things that I'm just telling you. These are actually things that I personally believe and do. And I will say this, I am not some kind of an expert or anything. I'm not even very smart. I literally just study the processes that people have and am sharing them with you. And I found that just by using these processes a little bit, you'll find that you'll improve the odds of success. I want to quickly recap what we covered in the first 2 lectures here. Really the history of this lean movement. And who here has heard of the word lean startup or the phrase lean startup? Pretty much everyone in here. Yeah, it's kind of this bastardized word that I somewhat hate a little bit because it actually is. People don't know what it means and they don't know where it came from, and they think there's this magic in saying the word lean actually makes you lean. And so one of the things that we've talked about is how you actually use these tools to really become lean. And this concept of evidence-based entrepreneurship is really a way to get you there. So the first 2 things we talked about were idea generation and customer discovery. And idea generation is really the process of evaluating what are all the potential things you're inspired by, what are the ideas worth pursuing. And it's one of the things that a team of MBAs, including John, who's here, has spent some time with me working on my current startup, is how do you take all of these interesting ideas and actually evaluate them with some kind of a scientific process in market research. So in the last lecture, we spent time really diving into this thing called the scientific method. And we did something called lean naming and lean logoing. And the whole goal of it was to prove that despite our best intentions to say what we think is the right answer or what our best guesses are, we're oftentimes wrong. And the recap of last lecture is pretty simple. Our guts are pretty crappy. This is an example of what my team that I had a couple MBAs working on a project last spring, this is how we ranked these names, domain names for a project we were working on. And you can see we were basically totally wrong when we ran it through a scientific process. Lendvice was the one that we thought was the best. The consumers that we tested actually scored it worse. Same thing with logos and the like. So kind of this idea was to help you guys get familiar with kind of using the scientific method. So